Greetings and welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation. To our members, friends, and everyone joining us in our virtual congregation on YouTube today.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Robin Landerman Zucker, minister of this congregation, and I will be hosting our virtual recorded worship service for today, our In-Gathering Sunday, September 13th, 2020, with music from Rumi Wood and Rebecca Prisnick. 4 of our worship associates join me today to explore a day in the spiritual life. Shar Tarashante, Kevin Parks, Nancy Paxton, and Andy Hogue. On this In-Gathering Sunday, we'll also share a virtual water communion ceremony and a special Zoom social hour. We have sanctuary care packages for our members and friends that include objects to bring you closer to our virtual worship service and participate in our weekly rituals. A small little portable chalice with a battery-powered candle, a hope stone, and a card with our mission and covenant, and some Dove chocolate to bring you the sweetness of our community. We hope to get those out to all of our members and friends by the end of the month, or you can stop by Beacon on a Monday or a Wednesday from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock to pick one up. We are glad that you have made Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation part of this day in your spiritual life. Our congregation is spiritually open and intentionally inclusive. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are always welcome here. Our members and friends bring many interests, theologies, and viewpoints to our door. Here we trust you will find a common desire for meaningful community and spiritual growth and relevant religious exploration in a framework with very flexible borders. Membership in this congregation is open to anyone who chooses to walk with us in the spirit of love, the search for truth, and the pursuit of justice. As I light the chalice, the symbol of our free faith, please light your own chalice or candle at home and join in the response words that you will see on your screen.
We light this chalice with a flame that draws us together. With this flame, we cut through the darkness of isolation and are warmed by the fires of our inner connection.
The mission and covenant of Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation express our values and our vision of ourselves as a gathered community in the world. Please say the mission and covenant with me. You will see the words on your screen. The mission of Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation is to be a welcoming community that embraces diverse thought and belief and builds a just, peaceful, and compassionate world. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in kindness, thus do we covenant. So let us now begin our day in the spiritual life. I have a few opening words to frame this service today. The great Zen master Sunrai Suzuki has said that Zen is not some kind of excitement, but concentration on our usual everyday routines. Washing dishes, riding on a bus, raking can be just as spiritual as meditation if we do these activities mindfully. I even recently read something on the spirituality of Zoom video conferencing, but I've decided not to include that today, since here we are doing this virtually, and it will indeed be a spiritual activity. In his book, Zen Soup, Lawrence Bold explains this is everyday Zen, the simple haiku poetry of life, everyday life. The familiar Zen saying, before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. tells us all we need to know. Living a spiritual life is nothing special. It's not extraordinary. It means meeting our workaday responsibilities and rituals with as much energy and cheerfulness as we can, particularly given the heaviness and stress created by our life in this COVID-19 reality. It's embracing the gift of life and valuing the beauty of simple activities, and whenever possible, maintaining perspective, calm, and a sense of humor as we go about our daily rounds, even within the limited worlds we're living in right now. Everyday Zen means dealing with the world as it is, not insisting that it be the way we feel it should be before we're willing to love it and embrace it. The greed, the violence, the inequity, the pettiness, the ignorance we see all around us. Those cry out for our love, our understanding, our resolve, and our action, but not our rejection or condemnation. If in this troubled, weary, and wonderful world, we can remain awake and compassionate, if in a violent world, we can remain peaceful, in a shallow world, if we can retain depth and we can retain sincerity, in a boastful world, if we can retain humility, in a world of ingratitude, if we can celebrate the gift of life, in this world of uncertainty that we're living in right now, if we can remain hopeful, then we have done all that we can do. A Zen attitude frees us from the notion that our lives are not good enough, an idea that permeates our popular culture, social media, advertising. The poet William Blake has written that for everything that lives is holy, life delights in life. Today, we will delight to the extent we can and surely explore one day in a spiritual life, and within it, find simple, poetic, and sacred meanings. A haiku for morning. Charmed, a sunny day in winter, a new you.
Waking Up by Frederick Buechner from The Alphabet of Grace. Darkness was upon the face of the deep, and God said, "Let there be light." Darkness laps at my sleeping face like a tide, and God says, "Let there be light." Why not? Out of the primeval chaos of sleep, he calls me to be alive again. He calls me to be this rather than that. He calls me to be here rather than there. He calls me to be now rather than then. Waking up into the new day, we are all of us Adam on the morning of creation, and the world is ours to name. Out of many fragments, we are called to put back together a self again.
Linda Waldner in No Place Like Home, brushing your teeth. Take teeth, which are so insignificant in God's layout of the human body that they're not even visible until you smile. I am committed to brushing them twice a day, not just back and forth as I was taught as a child, but one tooth at a time, in front and behind, with a vertical motion. This is not quick cleanup because company's coming. This is closer to polishing the silver every night of your life. I always felt that brushing my teeth twice a day was religion enough, but that was before the periodontist instructed me in the ceremony of the rubber tip at the end of my toothbrush. I'm devoted to the well-being of my teeth as much as anyone. Still, I'm not prepared to take the veil for them.
Waiting for the Water to Boil by Wendy Wright in Sacred Dwelling. Standing at the kitchen stove early in the morning, looking past it through an open window, I feel sleepy, unfocused, fragmented, waiting for the coffee water to boil. An impulse to pray arises in me, but the thought of God remains as vague and unfocused as I feel myself to be at the moment. I am not in the mood for words. A few months ago, I was in India, and now, without consciously thinking what to do, I find myself raising my hands in front of my face and putting palms together in the way Indians do in their gesture of respect. Quickly, my emotions change. I become aware of a stir of energy throughout my body. My hands, palms still together, move downward until they are in front of my navel. I feel centered for the first time since arising, and the tree leaves outside the window begin to sparkle. During this little rite, which I have never performed before, no words pass through my consciousness. Theologically, there is either nothing or everything to say about it. Some, including myself, will call it prayer, others not. In any case, it was a short and subtle ritual of transformation, celebrated with sweet contentment and a grateful heart.
Making Breakfast by Andre Dubas in Broken Vessels. The woman sets the table. She watches me beat the eggs. I scramble them in a saucepan. I take out plates, spoon eggs on them, and we sit and eat. She and I in the kitchen have become extraordinary. We're not simply eating, we're pausing in the march to perform an act together. We're in love, and the meal offered and received is a sacrament which says, I know you will die. I'm sharing food with you. It's all I can do, and it's everything.
Sitting on the Porch by Wendy Wright from In Sacred Dwelling. From the porch, one observes the simple rhythms of daily life. The neighbor taking out the garbage in the early morning. The woman from the next street who regularly walks her little dog just after supper time. The school-age boys exercising prowess in bicycling. The elderly widow receiving a rare visit from an in-law. The business-like drivers passing in cars whose faces mirror their intent to get where they're going. On the porch, one hears the sounds that surround us, the worried chipping of jays over a nest, the cries of a waking baby across the street, the approaching bell of the ice cream man's truck, distant sirens from the city, the neighborhood dogs whose resonant barks carry airborne canine conversations well over the barriers of fenced-in yards. Seated upon the porch, one finds it unnecessary to comment upon or analyze what one sees or hears. It is enough that it is. Being is not something to be taken for granted or overlooked, but something to be breathed in and celebrated with sweet contentment and a grateful heart.
Reading the Newspaper by Macrina Vidakara in a tree full of angels. I've never been very good at feasting on the daily newspaper. It turns bitter in my mouth, and yet this is my world. This face of suffering I must embrace as a part of my responsibility. Part of the feast is becoming aware of the world that is mine. Part of the feast is owning this broken world as my own brokenness. I clasp the newspaper to my heart and ask once again in the stillness of the night, what are we doing to the image of God in one another?
Entering a Building by Robert Cidello in Facing the World with Soul. We make a beautiful building when we stop for it, arrest the motion of thoughts, and linger with it, rather than merely using it. A glass tower is not unlike a computer. Both are media whose message is to increase efficiency. To spend time each day giving attention to a technical building where one works is a very unfamiliar gesture towards a thing designed to receive little attention, designed to focus on efficient work. The soul work here consists of defamiliarizing it, loosening the web of anesthesia.
Please join me in singing For All That Is Our Life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks, and all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and our own days glad.
Each week, members of the congregation are invited to share a personal joy or sorrow in the supportive fellowship of this community. This week, we're using the water from our drive-by water communion, which you will see later in the service, for our joys and sorrows this week, which amplifies the idea that when we drop a stone into the water to symbolize a joy or sorrow, it creates a ripple, just like whatever happens to one of us affects all of us, not just within our congregation, but in our community and throughout the world. And in that spirit, my first stone is for everybody on the West Coast of the United States who is dealing with terrifying wildfires that are destroying communities, affecting people of all backgrounds, races, creeds, religions. The wildfires don't really care. And we hope that everybody will be safe and that these fires will end soon. As my friends and my daughter in Oregon have said, pray for rain. For all of those social justice warriors who remain on the street, remain in the forefront to fight for racial justice, and to talk about appropriate measures in our world for maintaining order. We hold you in our hearts, and we hope that we can have peaceful resolutions to these issues. Again, as I have said week after week to all of us, as we are all dealing with the coronavirus throughout the world, may we stay safe and well. May our families be safe and well. May we breathe ourselves through this difficult and stressful time. For all the joys we hold, the things we find joyful, the kind of ways we take delight in the simple things, which is the theme of our service today, and find some calm amid the chaos. Let us hold those joys and celebrate those joys, and remember that, as Julian of Norwich said, all will be well. And as one of my friends likes to say in response to that, well, maybe all is well, somewhere in between. But may we hold the joys and the sorrows in balance to the best of our ability. And for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken because they are too tender or too private to share, may we remember that everyone is fighting their own private battle. We know not what it is, but because we're human, we know it to be true. So may we be kind, compassionate, flexible, and forgiving with one another. So I invite you now to close your eyes and put your feet on the floor, uncross your arms, put down whatever you might be holding, and just breathe. 4 beats in through your nose, 5 or 6 beats out through your mouth in a steady stream, creating spaciousness and as much openness and relaxation as you can. Breathing is a part of a day in the spiritual life, which we sometimes almost forget to do. We breathe very shallowly. We don't breathe intentionally. And it can bring us such relief, can open us up, calm us, and soothe us through difficult times. So let's breathe. 4 beats in through the nose and 5 or 6 beats out through the mouth together. Breathe and allow. Holding things tightly will not make them easier. Stop and feel, breathe and allow. For some, a day in the spiritual life includes praying. Here's a poem by that name by the Reverend David Rankin. He writes, I love to pray, to go deep down into the silence, to strip myself of all the pride, selfishness, and coldness of heart, to peel off thought after thought, passion after passion, till I reach the genuine depths of it all. To remember how short a time ago I was nothing, and in how short a time again I will not be here. To dwell on all the joys, all the ecstasies, all tender relations that give my life zest and meaning, to peek through a mystic window and look upon the fabric of life, how still it breathes, how solemn its march, how profound its perspective, and to think how little I know, how very little, except the calm, calm of the silence and the singing, singing in the night. Prayer for me, is the soul's intimacy with the sacred, the ultimate kiss. A haiku for afternoon. Quiet house, flavor of peppermint tea, hot on the tongue.
Playing with the Dog, as adapted from my own dog, by Gary A. Kowalski in The Souls of Animals. Everyone needs a spiritual guide, a minister, rabbi, counselor, wise friend, or therapist. My own wise friend is my dog, Annie. She has deep knowledge to impart. She makes friends easily and doesn't hold a grudge, except for Bo, the neighborhood basset. She enjoys simple pleasures and takes each day as it comes. Like a true Zen master, she eats when she's hungry and sleeps when she's tired. She's not hung up about sex. Best of all, she befriends me with an unconditional love that human beings would do well to imitate.
Putting Away Socks by Laura Green in Reinventing Home. From the day you bring them home from the store, socks require care, all out of proportion to the services they provide in return. Socks need to be put away, found, worn, washed, dried, folded, or balled up. Put away, worn, thrown in a corner, found, washed, and dried. An endless cycle of obligation and loss. You can get metaphysical about socks if you like, pondering the grace of their design, their stubborn cat-like refusal to be team players, their bachelor-like tendencies to pair off unpredictably, and so on. But I think that maybe like looking for the cosmos in a pebble. You can do it, but it takes a high level of belief.
Swimming by Doris Grumbach from Coming into the End Zone. Water to me is a saving grace. As a child, I forgot my anger at my parents or camp counselors or teachers if I went to a swimming pool or to the lake. Water was freedom, an element in which I believed I had perfect control. Lake and pool waters were calm enough to provide that illusion. I moved through the water in a kind of ecstasy, cut away from the rules of the land, social requirements, limitations, disapproval. Water was action, more effective than prayer. When I swam, I believed in God.
Driving in Traffic by Frederick Buechner in The Clown in the Belfry. It was gorgeous traffic. It was beautiful traffic. But that's not usual. It was a beauty to see, to hear, to smell, to even be a part of. It was so dazzlingly alive, it all took my breath away. It rattled and it honked and it chattered with life. The people, the colors of the clothes, the marvelous hodgepodge of faces, all of it. The taxis, the shops, the blinding sidewalks. The spring day made everybody a celebrity. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, every last one of them. It even made the litter and clamor and turmoil a kind of a miracle.
Sharing Gossip by Kathleen Norris in Dakota. We are interrelated in a small town, whether we whether or not we're related by blood. We know without thinking about it who owns what car. Inhabitants of a town as small as a monastery learn to recognize each other's footsteps in the hall. Story is a safety valve for the people who live as intimately as that. And I would argue that gossip done well can be a holy thing. It can strengthen communal bonds. Like the desert tales that monks have used for centuries as a basis for a theology and a way of life. The tales of a small town gossip are often morally instructive, illustrating the ways ordinary people survive the worst that happens to them. Or, conversely, the ways in which self-pity, anger, and despair can overwhelm and destroy them. Gossip is a theology translated into experience. In it, we hear great stories of conversion, like the drunk who turns his or her life around, as well as stories of failure. We can see that pride really does go before a fall, and that hope is essential. We watch closely those who retire or who lose a spouse, lest they lose interest in living. When we gossip, we are also praying, not only for them, but for ourselves.
Reading by the Walk by Linda Weltner in No Place Like Home. I am a naturalist at heart with a patio for my classroom. I may not be the only student in attendance, however. For last week, I was pulling out weeds where the walk goes by the garage. I was scolded by a squirrel who seemed to be overseeing my labors. If I continued with the task, I may get to see the baby blue jays by the compost heap learn to fly, or be around when the first autumn leaf sails on the bricks. This I know, there is absolutely no hope of beating the weeds, which are out there growing back this very moment. I need to reframe this task so that my thinking fits reality and sends me outside with the proper attitude. When I step out on our patio, I'm not fighting the weeds, I'm joining them.
Writing a Letter by Terry Tempest Williams from Refuge. Our correspondents show us where our intimacies lie. There is something very sensual about a letter, the physical contact of pen on paper, the time set aside to focus thoughts, the folding of the paper into an envelope, licking it closed, addressing it, a chosen stamp, and then release of the letter to the mailbox. All are acts of tenderness. And it doesn't stop there. Our correspondences have wings, paper birds that fly from my house to yours. Flocks of ideas crisscrossing the country once opened, a connection is made. We are not alone in the world.
Taking Care of the Car by Robert Sardello in Facing the World with Soul. My station wagon is being fixed now, and I hope everything comes out okay. It's good to have a car you don't worry about denting. The wagon was always the one that got left out in the rain and snow. If there was a dirty job to be done, I did it in the wagon. I saved my good car because I wanted the good car to last. I've had 3 good cars since I bought the wagon. The wagon, mistreatment and all, has outlasted the cars I pampered. When I get it back, the first thing I'm going to do is give it a nice full tank of high-octane gas, some clean, fresh oil, and a warm bath. I want the wagon to know it's loved.
Green fields and rolling hills, moving up to Sweet dreams of yestertime are running through my mind, of a place I left behind. It's been so long, I can't remember when. I've been to Canaan and I wanna go back again. It's been so long, I'm living till then. I've been to Canaan and I won't rest until I go back again. I'm content with myself. Sometimes I long to be somewhere else. I try to do what I can. If I dig a day demands, we all need a promised land. Oh, it's been so long, I can't remember when. I've been to Canaan, I wanna go back again. It's been so long, I'm living till then. I've been to Canaan and I won't rest until I go back again. Oh, I wanna be there in the winter time, with the fireplace burning to warm me, and you to hold me when it's stormy. It's been so long, I can't remember when. I've been to Canaan and I wanna go back again. It's been so long, I'm living till then. I've been to Canaan and I won't rest until I go back again. I've been to Canaan and I won't rest until I go back again.
A haiku for evening. Knocking. Cold comes in unasked. The night house.
Gathering Up Crumbs by Gunilla Norris in Becoming Bread. Be careful with the crumbs. Do not overlook them. Be careful with the crumbs, the little chances to love, the tiny gestures, the morsels that feed, the minims. Take care of the crumbs. A look, a laugh, a smile, a teardrop, an open hand. Take care of the crumbs. They are food also. Do not let them fall. Gather them. Cherish them.
Reading from Joseph Epstein's The Middle of My Tether. I read in the hope of discovering the truth, or at least some truths. I look for truth in what some might deem strange places, novels and poems, histories and memoirs, biographies and autobiographies, letters and diaries. In reading for truth, you understand, I'm not seeking a full plan, some large system that will explain the world to me, or a patent for bliss. Instead, I seek clues that might explain life's oddities, that might light up the dark corners of existence a little, that might correct foolish ideas I have come to hold too dearly, that might finally make my own story here on earth more interesting, if not necessarily more pleasant.
Going to Bed by Laura Green in Reinventing Home. The heart of my house has to be my bed. If relaxation and acceptance are the warp and woof of a domestic life, and if home is the place where I'm most free to be myself, then my bed is the place where it all comes together. Here's where I think naked thoughts, daydream, make love, worry, plot, argue, get my back scratched, speculate, talk about growing old, and finally, cut the mooring ties and drift out with the dream tide. The bed, the place where we're born and die, is our primeval place.
Checking on the children, Wendy Wright in Weavings. It has been my habit to look at my children's feet when they are sleeping. This has helped me to cultivate an awareness of their uniqueness, their God-givenness, and to disarm myself of the posture of defensiveness and combativeness that I have created in myself. There are 3 different sets of feet, each perfect, each expressive of the life stage and personality of each of my children. The blunt, babyish toes and flat arches that support a tirelessly running body, sturdy enough to use the way a rabbit uses its hind feet in defense. The slightly larger, more graceful toes and heels that are fond of practicing ballet, feet that often remain tucked up under a frilly skirt that when impulse strikes can run like the wind. The slender feet, half child's, half woman's, that kick off their shoes whenever they enter a room, that are alternately decorously placed in a ladylike pose, or sprawled out on any and all available pieces of furniture. It is those feet that have taught me the very little I know about seeing with the eyes of love.
Getting a Late Snack by Robert Fogum in Uh-Oh. This is not a group activity. It is a private religious experience which in the holy solitude of the midnight hour, you are taking communion with the spirits of bird and fruit and field. The best moments from past feasts come to mind, and it is times like these you have no doubt that life is good, that your family, all tucked away in their beds, are royal folks, and that grace abounds. Amen.
Please join me in singing Come Sing a Song with Me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me that I is hard to find, and I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
The spirit of generosity and gratitude flows through Beacon. And every week, whether we are meeting at our building in Flagstaff or we're meeting here in our virtual sanctuary on YouTube, we take an offering to support Beacon and our community partners. So we encourage you to donate to Beacon, and you can do that two ways. You can make an offering by going to our website, beaconuu.com, and find the donate button and make a secure online donation through the Vanco application. We ask that you donate to us directly from a bank account rather than using a debit or credit card to save us the fees and enable us to keep more of the donations for the work of the congregation. Or you can send us a check to 510 North LaRue Street, Flagstaff, Arizona, 86001. Either way, we greatly appreciate your support during this time. And finally today, we come together on Ingathering Sunday with a virtual water communion ceremony. Usually, of course, this ceremony is done on Ingathering Sunday in our sanctuary, but this year we are being creative, and we had a drive-by water communion. I've put together a slideshow of the beloveds within the Beacon community that have come by with their water or have sent selfies with descriptions of what that water means to them and how it's meaningful. Whether we're together or apart, our lives flow into each other every day in this spiritual life and this run-of-the-mill life, because we are Beacon, always connected. Blessed be, blessed we, and amen. Run deep, run clear, fill any space to its own dimensions, respond to the moon, to gravity, change colors with the light, hold your temperature longer than the surrounding air, take the coast by storm, go underground, bend light, be the one thing people need even when they're fasting. Eat boulders, quietly be a universal solvent.
Bring me